Hi, everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock. Welcome to Giant TV. This is my channel where I have incredible entrepreneurs on here doing great things, and certainly AmyK and David are two of them. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks for having us.
absolutely. And David, you've got an incredible background. I just want to do a quick intro where you have decades leading private equity ventures and also serving as a CEO. I've gotten to know you and your background, amazing. And you're now leading a Vistage Group in the greater Phoenix area, AmyK. Obviously, we know each other, and you are an international award-winning keynote speaker, best-selling author, founder of AmyK International, and so many other things. Uh, and so I want to just jump into this because this is going to be a great session. David, I'm going to let you start talking a little bit about what you're doing with Vistage, and let's get into featuring AmyK and all that she has to say.
Sure. So thank you, Paul. Listen, I've just started this venture with Vistage, and I think I've picked a great organization to work with and met a lot of great people so far. The last 20 years, I've spent running a lot of different companies in a lot of different areas. And one of the things that struck with me is being able to help people get the right people in the right seat. And working to develop them. And I think with Vistage, this has offered an opportunity for me to do that in spades because of the people surrounding Vistage. AmyK is one of the people that supports Vistage as a speaker, and she was a member. I don't want to steal any of her thunder, but for me, it's about helping people in their next development, helping them get to where they want to get to. So that's why I've joined Vistage.
Love it. Love it. AmyK, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on something. A provocative comment that you just made that I think we're all familiar with is being in the right seat on the right bus. And I am sure, David, with all of your M&A experience and expertise, you often arrived when the wrong people were in a seat, or you could even say the right people were in the wrong seat. Yeah. And so a lot of times this hits right at the heart of what I share with leaders. And that is that the life that you desire, whether that's at work professionally with the team that you deserve, or it's at home and your personal relationships, the life that you desire is on the other side of a tough conversation. And so often in that M&A scenario that you just alluded to, you're walking in and there are really good people who are in either the wrong seat on the bus or on the entirely wrong bus. And it's because so many leaders have avoided having that tough conversation. And it's not a cruel conversation to say, hey, my job as a leader is to say, how do I ignite and maximize your brilliance, whether that's shifting you into a different role or helping you find an entirely different bus so that you can be your best self somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. I can say that that is the case more often than not. You know, there's a lot of great people out there. Sometimes they're just in the wrong company or in the wrong seat. Probably the most exciting case was when I walked into the office and there were 10 people there and 9 of them had to find a different seat.
Wow.
And one of them, I actually moved to another organization where he became a CEO.
Wow.
And was very successful. Yeah. And he's still there today.
That's amazing. And that is, without sounding hyperbolic, that is a huge testimony to how powerful you see your role is, even in an M&A situation, of finding that right seat. And that is a tough conversation to have with some people because they have to be brave enough to make that courageous decision to move or shift or embrace that change. The other thing that I think that is so important to point out is the cost of that. So let's just take that extreme example, 9 out of 10. The cost of not having those conversations, and yes, finite dollars, energy, time loss, but then also the stress, the emotional toll that it takes on leaders when they're not having those conversations to get the team that they deserve.
Right, right. I can echo that exactly. Once you get the right person in the right seat, everybody starts to relax. Everybody starts to perform better. They stop looking over their shoulder, or they stop trying to cover for other people. And so the organization just works better when you have the right people working the right jobs. And
Well,
so I,
all of us are in the people business, right? For sure.
Yeah,
and
and I
Paul
had a
wants to jump in here, I
yeah, I
think.
just had a question for both of you. How do you know that someone's in the wrong seat? What are the signals that are going on at a company that raise the red flags?
David, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. I've had to interview thousands of people, and you can just tell what they're interested in, what their experience leads to, what they want to do for work. So it has to be a match of their capability and what they want to do. And if you know what you're going to do with the organization, in this case, I can name one example where we were just in 2 states and we were going to go cover the whole country.
Hmm.
And the sales leader was great, but he was locked in to his geography at home and he couldn't travel. So
Oh,
in order to be a good leader, he was going to have to go out and I was going to have him gone more often than not. And he had young children that I think that's important. Being a parent was very important to him.
yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure to give them that opportunity. So it's really a match of what they're capable of doing and what they really can do or want to do, right? That's how I'd sum it up.
Yeah, and I think you're also alluding to that nuanced layer of there's congruency. There's congruency in what I'm doing that matches my own internal like compass, my own set of values. Like you're saying, he valued time at home. He valued time with his children. And so what makes him high on life, and I am going to be specific, high on life, that where his
Yeah.
passion and his brilliance get ignited is that he is living in alignment with his essential self and his core values. And I think, Paul, that goes to, again, when you see somebody who's not in the right seat, they're burned out, they're exhausted, they're apathetic, they are drained, they're often sick a lot
Oh,
because,
yeah.
again, the compromised immune system, they're constantly stressed. And it's not that they're a bad person. And I think that's really important for us to say. It's that they're not in the matched, aligned seat that gives them that kind of that joie de vivre to say, oh, you can see my light. You can see how passionate I am. You can see how motivated I am intrinsically.
Yeah, AmyK, and when you're hired to go into a business to look at this, are you hired to look at this specific issue? Look at the
Sometimes.
people? Yeah, and how do you approach it? I mean, do you interview the people? Like what's the execution of trying to figure that out?
Well, I hate to scare people, but I can usually tell in about 3 minutes whether you're in the right seat by the way you present. And I know that's a medical term, the way the patient presents, but my
Yeah.
science background, I use that vocabulary. It's quickly obvious to me where their energy is, their ability to retain information because they're passionate about the subject. They have high emotional intelligence, all the things that make a good leader a great leader shows up when they're in the right seat and they're investing in their own personal growth, and you can just see it. And I know that sounds a
Yeah.
little woo woo, but it's one of those like intangible things that I've done this enough that it's like, okay, you're really great but you belong over here, or you're brilliant but just like David was saying, but you need to go lead another company where you can actually have a greater ROI, and I mean ROI as ripple of impact.
David, what do you think?
Oh, I think she hits around a great point of view. In 3 minutes, you can tell a lot about a person. The thing is, you're right most of the time, but you got to double check yourself sometimes. I've been wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of things, but but you make that call and then you talk to them about it and you help them get to that point as well. And I think that's what Amy was talking about when she talked about what's best for that person. Their passion is obvious. And if it's obvious and it's not fitting with the organization, you can point it out to them and make it easier transition because so Amy, you want to jump in there?
No, I want to add to that, but I don't want to cut you off.
No, go for it.
You, David, are reminding me of a Vistage story. So probably 15 years ago, we were on a Vistage retreat, which is a powerful experience for Vistage members to really go off and have some of the deeper strategic, operational, cultural conversations. And there was a gentleman who had an underperforming executive assistant. And he was scared to death to fire her. He didn't want to have that conversation. And I said, let's flip your perspective, because you're just saying some of these conversations are really, really hard. What if it's not about conflict? What if it's not about performance? What if it's about you care so much about her as a person that you want her to be in some place that lets her feel fulfilled, that actually brings out the best in her? That's a beautiful gift to give somebody, is to say, you have so much to offer, and it's not in this role. It is not in this seat. And the world deserves to have your light. So let's work together to co-create an opportunity where you can really shine your light. Well, that's a whole different perspective shift on having a tough conversation versus having a loving leadership conversation.
Right. I agree with that. And I've had the same instance where somebody promoted somebody to a position that wasn't right for them. They were a great office manager, but they didn't make a great general manager. And there's a big difference in what that responsibility was. And that person was probably much more valuable as an office manager. And she drove herself nuts. You could tell her whole behavior changed. She tried to be somebody she wasn't. And when we talked to her about switching back to it, you could see she looked 10 years younger in an instant. She just relaxed and she's, oh, really? I can do that? She didn't want to let the company down, right? And it worked out well. And everybody was happy. Everybody won. So,
Yeah.
but you have to come from that position that you care about the person, not just the bottom line of a company.
Yeah. And AmyK, I was going to ask you too, also, when you're working with businesses, and remind us all what, who you're working with, define that. When you go in there, you said sometimes you're brought in right seat, right person. That's an issue. What are the other like high alert issues that you see with these businesses, why you're in there in the first place?
So I'm constantly working with senior leaders. So we're talking the classic personal development, the hard conversations with me, myself, and I, because I used to say probably 30 years ago that your number one job is to set your people up for success. And then as I got older, I realized that's job number two. The number one job is to be in a state of awareness and self-awareness and emotional intelligence that your state of being is your number one doing. So when you've fueled your life force, you can go light somebody else's. So really taking care of yourself so that you can show up. And so one of the things that I often do with leaders is I move them out of ego, that conditioned false self that the entire capitalistic world has taught you to be, and move into heart. And it sounds woo-woo until you realize it's very practical, it's very tangible, and it's highly profitable. So I'm often working with leaders to say, okay, we got to get you out of ego, and we got to get you into heart. And we got to get all of your emerging leaders out of ego and into heart. And so one of the classic phrases that I often hear is, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to be promoted. I'm not ready for that next challenge. I'm not ready to take on more responsibility. And what's fascinating about that is we often see the ego as this false bravado, this insecurity, the I'm amazing coming from, again, a place of insecurity. What's more pernicious about the ego is it wants to control. It wants to keep you safe. It's trying to protect you. And in that misguided effort, it has you play small. So what I'm often telling the next emerging leader who's like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready, that's really your ego, just trying to keep you safe. And when you can shift into your heart, you realize I have tons of strengths. I have lots of experience. I can face, it's not all going to be fine. It's not Pollyanna, but I can face whatever comes if I show up with the intention to do my very best and to realize that I can't figure it out all on my own. Now, this sounds like a pitch, but I mean it sincerely. That's what I loved most about Vistage, is that you're not doing it on your own. You have a board that you typically can't afford of other great, brilliant minds that are giving you that breadth of perspective, that are telling you what it is that you're missing, that are problem solving in real time to help you be successful. So that instead of saying, I'm not ready, you say, no, I'm ready. And I'm also ready to keep learning.
That's a great way to say it. And David, what's your feeling about your group you're building, and the way you're facilitating that group and want to do it and grow it?
Yeah, so Amy hit upon a couple points. So thanks, Paul. So one of the things that the group I'm building, I'm trying to build a group that's diverse in not only background, education, experiences, how they see life, not just what industry they're in. And I think an important piece of that she said is, I'm not ready. And a lot of the people that I'm talking to sometimes throw that out. I don't know if I'm ready for that. And then you have to challenge them to say, okay, what is getting in the way? Is it that you don't want to grow, or is it the environment, or what is it? So I'm glad you brought that up, Amy. But another thing I wanted to bring up and follow up and maybe ask Amy about is one of the things I'm trying to do, because of the way I grew up. I had a very strong mother. My godmother was probably the most influential person in my life growing up. She spent a lot of time with me. So I have the utmost respect for the way women are and what they bring to life, and how in my life they made me a better person. So I am trying to recruit intentionally more women than average that run companies. So I want half the group to be women. And so, Amy, from your perspective, what did you see as, being the obvious here, the woman in the room? You probably weren't the only woman, that maybe at times you were, but what value did you see for you personally, but also for the rest of the group?
Yeah, well, David, first, thanks for being an ally. Thank you for having that mission of having 50% women, because the truth is today, and McKinsey and company will support this data, that 71% of senior leadership across our Fortune 500 companies is still male. And, that's 29% for women. And yet you have Accenture, you've got the global leadership forecast saying that when women are in leadership positions, the company is more innovative and it is more profitable. And we have all kinds of case studies to prove that. And so you need that diversity. You need the other perspective around critical thinking and problem solving, and how women look at product placement and going to market, and how they see infrastructures and team dynamics and collaboration and connectivity, and all the business concepts are just better when they're looked at from a wide set of perspectives and experiences, both male and female, but also the diversity that you're talking about in experience and background and education and cultural and socioeconomic. And that, to me, as a member of Vistage, was one of the most helpful and valuable things that I had in my 8-year tenure, was that we would sit down in an executive session and we would solve problems with a multitude of perspectives, generational, different industry, different education. And so it made you a better decision maker. It made you a more informed decision maker. You could learn from other people's mistakes before you stepped in that same pothole, right? And so it also reaffirmed that, for instance, I too, on the flip, David, had incredible male figures in my life. I had an extraordinary father. I have extraordinary brothers. All of my bosses over the years were men, and many of them were mentors. And so when you have this interplay, it takes out a lot of the sting and just gives you a boost. It just is a whole career trajectory kind of like launch. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah. So let me also ask you what you see as a difference in today's environment. What do you see different to succeed as a leader? Because you mentioned that earlier about multi-generational. What do you see different today being a leader and being successful with today's environment, and how you see it being different today than it was, let's say, 20 years ago?
Well, a lot of shifts. There are a lot of changes, and we could be here for hours, but one that comes right to top of mind is, post-industrial revolution, everything was cookie cutter. Everything was template. And we're going to, punch a clock. We're going to stay in line. We're going to do our job. And we want everybody to do it the same. And we're going to treat everybody equally. Now, this is interesting because it's slightly provocative. So I want to make sure I'm not misquoted. When it comes to civil rights, when it comes to love, everybody needs to be treated equally. When it comes to honoring the needs of your people, one of the biggest shifts in the last 20 years is being more adaptable, not having the cookie cutter template. And the way that I phrase it is, we need to replace treating people equally with treating people equitably. And I want to be really clear on what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the same respect at a civil rights level and inclusivity and love, but it means that you meet people where they're at. So the person that has children who are playing softball and their values are that they want to spend time with kids, if we come full circle, they have the flexibility and the adaptability to go watch that game at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, because it's not about butts and seats right now. It's more about, are they meeting and exceeding their goals? Are they giving their people what they need? The next person has other constraints, and we need to adapt and be flexible with their needs. We have people who have physical requests. We have people who have emotional requests. We have people who have different job descriptions. And it's really having the discernment and the maturity in this time of leadership to say, how do I meet my people where they're at so that they can all excel, meet and exceed their goals? Everybody's getting the resources that they need, but I'm also treating them as a unique individual.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because that's one of my beliefs as well. I think it takes, you mentioned maturity, but also takes people to care about it, because a death knell for a company is putting an HR policy in place, and it's the same for everyone. And people are in different positions in their life. You know, the person just starting out their career, some things are more important to them than the person who's about to retire or 30 years in, who has a large family. You know, so you have to be adaptable. And that's one of the things that I always, when I went into organizations and they said, oh, we got to have these firm policies, a lot of times 50% of the audience didn't like the policy. It didn't matter what it was, but 50% didn't like it.
David, you nailed it. People over policy all day long. People over policy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go on for so long. I just want to tell all those that watching this, because we simulcast this everywhere, is that get connected to David and AmyK. Their information will be around this session, and a lot of great content from both. Any sign off, any comments as we leave here?
I would just like to reinforce that these are the types of conversations that David's group is going to be having. This is what Vistage does, is it helps you to have the tough conversations, to be vulnerable in a sacred container. There's that classic adage, you know, it's lonely at the top. It doesn't have to be. When you join a group like Vistage, you realize that this is the group that you've been looking for your entire career. It is the safe and sacred container that is all about your success. And however you define that, it is about your success.
Yeah, and I can echo that. Some of the things that I'd like to reinforce, and a lot of the points that you brought up, Amy, were great today, and I really appreciate that. So I think the challenge for the people listening is what conversation are they not having today that's keeping them stuck where they are? So I'd like people to get value from that. And then also, where am I telling myself that I'm not ready? Because a lot of times it's, oh, we're not ready for that. You know, how many times have you heard an executive say to you, well, the organization's just not ready for that? And then they wait for that moment where they have to do it, or it's always harder to do it when you have to do it. So let's just, where is it that I'm saying I'm not ready for that, or our organization isn't ready? So I do appreciate everything that you added today, Amy, and this is very much like a Vistage meeting where you talk about issues, you have different points of view, and you hopefully people listening got something out of it. And I know every meeting I've been to, I've gotten at least one nugget to take back home and create value with. So,
yeah, well said. Well, I've known both of you for a while and I've heard you speak before, and I get something out of it every time I hear you. So love it. Thank you both for being here. I know we're going to be talking again.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having us.